Hello everyone, welcome to class. So today we will talk about a little bit over 전두환's regime and little bit of Kim Jong-il. Last time we talked about South Korea. So the topic of this chapter is change versus continuity. So I want you to think, what is change, who is change, or what is change, or what is a continuity for what in from that sense. So last time we talked about how South Korea democratization occur, and then last time we mainly focused on how brutal Chonduan regime was. And today I wanted to mention a little bit the relationship between South Korea and North Korea and what happened during late 1970s and early 1980s. That's what I aimed for. Last time we talked about South's push for democracy. So last time I explained South Korea become democratization, but I explained it wasn't easy for South Korea to become democratized. Last time we talked about what happened. There was a first talk between South Korea and North Korea. We called this the era détente, new détente. That means for a long time, from 1950 and 1950s, 1960s, there were Cold War, right? The era of Cold War. And then during the Cold War, the US versus Soviet Union was divided into two. So the whole global was divided into two. But from early 1970s, the new détente era started. The new détente era means the Cold War is mitigated a little. So these two spheres try to reconcile each other. So that's why South Korea and North Korea, they started to held the first talk. So the first inter-Korean dialogue started in 1971, but there was no substantial change between the two. But it's still very meaningful for these two countries because before in 1971 there was no official relationship between the two. But after 1971 we started to dialogue, and then there was help from North Korea and South Korea from 1970s and 1980s, and even these days actually not good. It depends on like what kind of president we have. So if we South Korea have open presidents, especially like particularly like left wing politicians, they try to open a relationship with North Korea. But if the president is heading toward left wing, then they wanted to make North Korea give up its nuclear weapons. So because of that, it's not likely to have a open relationship with North Korea, but still, this talk is very symbolic in both countries. But there is no substantial exchange, and I explained how Park Chung-hee was killed, right? So Kim Jae-gyu, he killed Park Chung-hee in 1979, and then at the time many scholars actually expected democratization in South Korea, but unlike democratization didn't occur right after the Park's assassination. But instead of Park, we have another coup d'etat occur, right? So that was Chun Doo-hwan. So Chun Doo-hwan, he was in power from 1980 to 1987. For 7 years, he did really bad things. So that's what I explained, right? What did he did in early 1980s. So he created Hanawe. That's the starting point of how he wanted to or motivated to coup in South Korea. And the coup d'etat occurred in 1979, December 12th, but it's not important. I mean, the important thing is he came to power, and then how he gave a pressure to retarded democracy in South Korea. And the important moment that I explain is how he gave a pressure for anti-democracy, right? So I wanted to explain. I explained Seoul Spring and what happened in 1980 Gwangju uprising. I showed the video of Gwangju uprising, and then it's just a movie. So if you have a time, then I strongly recommend you to watch the movie because movie explained quite well how brutal the Gwangju uprising was, and then the the John regime used military power to keep a pressure to the citizen. That's actually a huge deal these days. I mean, it's not possible, but it's not possible these days. But in 1980, John actually used a gunfire, right, or airborne troops for Gwangju uprising. Gwangju uprising has been produced a lot of sacrifice. So one, uh, according to, I mean, I don't want to talk about official death toll because probably wrong, but more than 600 people were died during May 18th, Gwangju uprising, and more than 2,000 people were injured during the Gwangju uprising. So it sacrificed a lot of people. So South Korea became democracy, but without, I mean, it was impossible without this sacrifice. South Korea, democrat. I mean, when we say like South Korea become a democracy with blood, as blood means here like Gwangju uprising and a lot of university students' death. I explained also there was an election, but election was all fraud, right? And then the election was indirect election, and he became the president of Korea, and he wanted to actually get rid of the opposition political party. So that's why he put Kim Dae-jung, one of their main opposition figure, he charged with the violation of national security, and the John put him life imprisonment. He tried to actually kill him, the Kim Dae-jung, but he failed. And not only opposition politicians, but also there were many sacrifices by university students. One of the biggest case that I explained is the Burim case. I actually showed the video, right? The Burim case. Not only Burim case, but also he gave a pressure to the press. So there was a press guidelines. They can actually write a report without or when they write articles, they have to follow these press guidelines. The press guidelines was given by the government, and then they have to follow what they said. And there was another a lot of issues related to by police. So there was a Bucheon police station sexual torture case, and then Mungi-dong sexual torture case. So there were more than one sexual torture case, and not only sexual torture case, but also I explained like death of Park Jong-chul. So he involved the legalization protest for Cheonggae Opera Workers Union and had a background in student activism. So he was killed by torture, water torture. And there was a death of Lee Han-yeol from Yonsei University. So these students died because of the police violence. and that's the representative case for like kind of symbol of Chonduan's regime. So Chonduan used pressure, violence to give a pressure for democratization. And in 1986, there was Asian Game. In 1988, Seoul Olympic Game hosting. But John's regime was over in 1987, and officially, John succeeded to held Olympic for the first time. And that's World Olympic, right? So Asian Game is not world. All countries participate. It's only Asian countries, but Seoul Olympic is a completely different thing. So it was a mega kind of event for South Korea for the first time. And he was succeeded in holding Seoul Olympic, and the next regime, so No Tae-woo, he become the next president. And he holds Seoul Olympic Games successfully. And we talked about June uprising. So there were two major uprisings during Chonduan's regime. The first uprising is Gwangju uprising. The second uprising is this June uprising. So June uprising was succeeded. The June uprising is an anti-dictatorship movement. The people actually the difference, we have to distinguish what's the difference between the two. So there were a lot of uprisings so far, and then so the uprising that I explained the last time was Lee Seung-man government, right? So there was a April 19th revolution, and April 19th revolution was led by students, and it was quite successful. And because of this revolution, Lee Seung-man government, Lee Seung-man gave up his power, right? And there was student-led movement, and Gwangju uprising started from students, and then only Gwangju citizens participated in that movement, and it failed. But June uprising is different from the Gwangju uprising, because June uprising is quite successful because many citizens actually participate. Not only citizens, but also students, religious people, opposition, all together. They all together participate in the movement. And it started from emergency measures for constitutional protection because his term is over, right? Because his term was 7 years, and then 1987 become his 7th. So he had to give up his power, but he didn't want to. So that's why people started to demonstrate. And then if you look at the number, you can see how many people actually participating. And from June 10th, that's the starting point of June uprising. So June uprising is not only one day, it's all month. So 10th, 15th, 17th, 26th. So millions of people actually at the end participate. So police couldn't do anything about it, and military couldn't do anything about it because it's not just one city, but it's a whole city. 34 cities altogether, they uprised. And that's why there was a June 29th declaration. So June declaration, he declares like this. He will change the law, promptly amend the constitution to introduce a direct presidential election through an agreement between the ruling and opposition parties, and peacefully transfer power in February 1988 through a presidential election under the new constitution. So that's the declaration. So the June declaration actually is the symbol of Korea's democratization. So Korea democratization occurred in 1987. So Victor Cha, throughout this book, he explained that there's a change, and change actually occurred from South Korean part. So this is what he said. So I will change the law, and there will be peaceful power transition, or peaceful power transfer from dictatorship to democracy. Then we will talk about later, like who will be selected or elected for the next presidency. But before that, I wanted to talk about a little what happened, the relationship between North Korea and South Korea in 1980s. So we talked about like 1971, there was a talk, but there was no substantial exchange between the two countries. But there were a lot of bad things, terrorist attack by North Korea, but there was a good things between the two. So I will explain what happened during early 1980s, and then next week there will be offline class, right? And then we invite over North Korean defector. So we will invite, and then we can ask questions to her. Anyway, so the first incident occurred in 1987, 83, sorry. So in September 1983, the Soviet jet shot down a Korean air flight. So I'm not sure, we have many international students, I'm not sure what kind of airline you use, but Korean Air is kind of like representative airline in Korea, right? So Korean Air and Asian Air, that's the two biggest airlines in Korea. And then at the time, there were 269 people were on board, and then they were killed. So Soviet military say that they mistook the Korean airplane for U.S. reconnaissance jet and ordered it to be shot. So they saying that, oh, we didn't know that Korean Air fly, so we mistook. So we thought that Korean Air is U.S. jet. So that's actually I've, as far as we know that the Korean Air flight a little bit passed over the Soviet sky a little, and then the Soviet thought that the U.S. jet is attacking the country. So that's why they ordered it to be shot down, and that's why the Korean Air was shot down, and 269 people were dead. The South Koreans were at the time really angry. They were in a rage, but there was little that they could do as the incident took place in the context of Cold War competition between the US and the Soviet Union. So South Korea is under the US umbrella. That means the US actually take responsibility for our security, right? So South Koreans were very angry, and then we wanted to do something about it to Soviet Union, but U.S. didn't want to make conflict between the two countries because it became huge. It became huge if the U.S. started to tackle. So that's why U.S. government didn't do anything about it. So this is the pictures of the sacrificed family in 1983. And then this is a picture of Kim Hyun-hee. She is a terrorist. And then we investigate what happened. The investigation reveals that the Korean airplane was bombed using a time bomb and liquid explosive disguised as alcohol left on board by North Korean operative Kim Seung-il and Kim Hyun-hee. She is Kim Hyun-hee. This is picture of Kim Hyun-hee. So Kim Hyun-hee revealed that South there are a lot still at the time we couldn't investigate quite well. So there are a lot of questions left whether this bomb was led by North Korea or Soviet Union. There are a lot of struggles between the two, but it turns out that it's terrorist by these North Korean operatives, and they were under direct order from Kim Jong-il. So Kim Jong-il's Kim Jong-il's that's the kind of not the first terror, right? So I explained like what happened during the Park Chung-hee regime. So during the Park Chung-hee regime, the North Korea actually tried to kill the leader several times, but they all failed. And then this was also the trial, but this is completely different from the previous one because the previous one was main aim was to kill the leader, but this one is not. It's not about the leader, but it's a civilian. So this is completely different story. But that's what North Korea did. And then they were disguised as Japanese nationals, Shinichi Hachiya and Mayumi Hachiya. So they pretended they are married, and then but they are North Koreans, but they had like Japanese passport, and they got actually direct orders from Kim Jong Il. And they tried to they actually killed people in Korean air. So 269 people were died because of this terrorist attack. And there was another terror we call Aung San Mausoleum in Burma. So there was a bombing at Aung San in Burma. There was Aung San Mausoleum bombing, and this was actually organized by North Korea too. And the main aim for this is to kill Chun Doo-hwan. The Chun Doo-hwan at the time visited Burma in 1983. So in October 1980. So look at the what happened the time between the two. So the time sorry, it's September, and then this happened, and then Aung San bombing is October, so it's just right after the Korean Air bomb happened, and then North Korean bomb killed 20 South Koreans in Lagun, including 4 cabinet members. The sacrifice were all high-ranking officials. So that's why it became more controversial. And the bomb was intended to assassinate John. That's the point. And who was on official visit to Burma. So John tried to he wanted to visit to Burma, and he was already in Burma at the time. John had to delay his departure from his accommodation, and thus North Korean terrorists set off the bomb before John arrived at his destination. So he's supposed to be arrived at the time, but he was late a little, and that's why he could avoid the event. Otherwise, he was also killed by North Korean terror. Then I think that the politics of landscape of politics in Korea would be changed a lot if John was killed by North Korean people. But luckily, I'm not sure this is lucky or not, but luckily he actually couldn't. John could survive because he delayed his departure. And John was so scared at the time because many people were killed, and then they were high-ranking officials. So he was so afraid. So he asked help from the U.S. military to exit the country safely. That's how he could survive for a long time. I mean, he died in 2021, as far as I remember. So he lived quite a long time, and then I think it became failed from North Korean perspective. So John wanted to retaliate, but Reagan visited South Korea and urged restraint. So John, like same as Park, so Park wanted to retaliate it, but John also wanted to retaliate, but the U.S. Tried not to, so that's why John couldn't do it. But otherwise, he would do something because he's also a dictator. And this is the picture. This is a very interesting picture, right? This is a few seconds ago when the bomb was bombing. So after this picture, right after the bomb, there was a huge bomb in that spot, and the people were killed in that spot. Many people were killed at the time. And this is the picture of like injured. There were people, some people were injured, and then it's on the hospital. So this is the picture they how do they treated after the attack. This is second terror by North Korea, and then but there was a reconciliation between the North Korea and South Korea, even though the North Korea bombed twice of South Korea, but still there was a peaceful gesture between the two as well. So Seoul announced a plan to provide Pyongyang with food, goods, and materials to improve the North Korean economy. So North Korean economy, we will learn later on how North Korean economy getting worse over time. And then, but in 1980, from 1980, it's not even comparable between the two countries. The South Korea became wealthier, but North Korea stayed the same. The South Korea announced a plan to provide some, aid, foreign aid to North Korea, but Kim Il Sung regime rejected this offer. So Kim Il Sung said, "Oh, we don't have to. You don't have to. We have enough." But shortly after, South Korea suffered a flood, killing over 200 people. And this time, it was Pyongyang that offered help and Seoul accepted. So that was actually for the first time North Korea helped South Korea. And then after this event, usually the help actually offered by South Korea, not North, but this was actually exceptional. At the time, the flood, Seoul flood is very famous in 1984. So over 1,300 North Koreans crossed the DMZ legally to bring food, medicine, and clothes to those suffering from flood. So I want to show the picture how serious it was. I mean, this is so not imaginable, right? So you cannot see anything. This is Han River bridge, but it's almost there, right? And then see, this is the pictures. At the time, this is Seoul 1984 Seoul floods. If you look up online, like 서울 홍수, 1984년 서울 홍수. If you Google it, then you can see a lot of pictures related to this flood. But this flood is very famous. I mean, 1 year ago, I'm not sure it's 2 years ago, 1 year ago, but I think because it's Yoonseongyeol's regime, so it was 1 year ago, I guess. There was a huge flood in Seoul, right? And then I'm not sure whether you remember the picture or not, but the guy was in the middle of Seoul, Gangnam, and then he was on the car, right? He took a picture, a selfie, and he uploaded, and the picture became really famous. So every year, almost every year, there is huge flood in Korea, but in 1984 flood is not even comparable because so many people were killed because of this flood. And then the picture of the right is from North Korea. So North Korea, you can see the North Korean flag, right? So North Korean flag, and then they try to provide a lot of food, clothes to South Korea. But at the time, South Korea didn't really need these things, but it's kind of symbolic. So South Korea wanted to reconcile the relationship between the North. So that's why the North accept and South Korea actually accept what they provide. That was actually for the first time, the South Korea got help from North Korea.